Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Remember, if you love film, gaming, or television content, please consider clicking that subscribe button because today we are going to be talking about the very controversial Marilyn Monroe film, Blonde. So, let's get into it. The first thing I want to do in this review for Blonde is ask you a question. Who is this film made for? Let me know in the comments below because I can't seem to figure that out. After watching this, I can tell you that fans of Marilyn Monroe will absolutely hate this film because it treats her with such disrespect that even someone who isn't really a massive fan of her like myself was still a little outraged at how the film treats a real person who was mistreated her entire life.
What are you doing?
I also think people who want to learn a little more about her life will not get anything out of this either because this is a fictitious tale of Marilyn's life, which I think a lot of audiences going into this will not really know that. You cannot trust a single thing this film is saying about Marilyn Monroe because this takes some real events in her life and adds things that feed into this pretentious mess that Andrew Dominik was attempting to make. This brings me to my next point, which is just how self-serving this all feels. I mean, I can see right through this style. Blonde feels like Andrew Dominik is screaming at the audience like, look at me, I'm an auteur, look at how edgy and stylish this is. And that just translated to what was ultimately a massive mess on the screen. I mean, this has to break some kind of record for the most aspect ratio changes in one film. It changes so much, as well as the color. I have seen some praise for the cinematography, and I can't really give it to that because it doesn't serve the film at all.
This is pointless.
Sure, I guess there are some pretty black and white shots, I'll give you that, like when we get the iconic shot of Marilyn's dress being blown up from the grate below. But for me, the color changes don't do anything because they don't seem to represent anything, which goes into Andrew Dominik's plea for attention. I thought at one point that it was supposed to represent when she was acting as Marilyn versus when she was Norma Jean, but it doesn't really do that at all, so it just wound up being a big disappointment. Another thing I have to knock here is the runtime. I mean, seriously, 2 hours and 50 minutes long for this type of film is ridiculous. And for how wacky everything is, trust me, it's not an interesting 2 hours and 50 minutes. I knew this was going to be a strange film going into it, as I heard that Netflix was very upset at this release because they wanted a huge Oscar player here, and after seeing it, they couldn't really understand how it would get that attention, as the Oscars prefer safer forms of films. But I cannot express to you how much of a slog this was to get through. The wackiness does not make this entertaining. It is so relentless and follows a pattern that while it is trying to be very weird, the film structure follows a very generic and repetitive pattern centered around Marilyn's relationships, which makes the film feel so boring. It is a bad note when I can safely say a full film length of 1 hour and 30 minutes could have been cut out of this easily and we would have gotten the same story. Now, we have to go into Ana de Armas's performance here. Look, I think she is a really great actress. She is fantastic in films like Blade Runner 2049, Knives Out, and even her small appearance in No Time to Die. And I can see if we were to break this film up into small TikToks or individual scenes, you can argue that this is her greatest performance yet. I will give the film some credit and say that she does give a committed performance, but in the whole context of the film, I could argue that this is actually one of her weaker performances. She is so frenzied and crazy the whole film with constant screaming and crying that it just feels over the top, and by the end of this near 3-hour runtime, I just got sick and tired of hearing it.
It's about to get all stupid up in here!
I won't go into details with spoilers, but near the end, we are supposed to be looking at this massive tragedy, and we just get one of the most goofiest shots I have seen in a while that felt so amateurish that I just couldn't help laughing at it. Look, in all fairness to this film, this is better than some of the most horrendous bottom tier garbage that we have seen this year. As I said earlier, there are a couple of black and white shots that look good, and Ana de Armas does have that committed performance. I would say that the first 30 minutes aren't that bad either. That is because it is starting this endless cycle the film seems to go through, but it hits on some tragedies that actually made me feel something. The same could be said for one of the more creepiest scenes. I think Andrew Dominic would be great in making a very decent, original horror film because when he wants to be creepy in this, he does succeed. When we get the introduction to Adrian Brody's character, I like what the film was doing then as well because it takes a tiny break from the torture the film seems to enjoy putting Marilyn through. And if we had a couple of moments of levity like this, it would have balanced things out a little better in my opinion. Overall, Blonde is a film that I do not recommend to you. It wants to make a commentary on how Marilyn Monroe was exploited and abused throughout her whole life, and this does that while exploiting and seeming to take pleasure in putting her through these scenes. Despite its negative reception, I at least had the impression that this would be interesting, and I'm not going to continue that narrative. There is some wackiness, but it is purposeless and the film is still such a drag. I don't think it's worth seeing the film for those aspects at all. I'm giving Blonde a 2 out of 5, and as I said earlier, I really don't think this is worth your time as I don't know who would enjoy this film. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. Just a quick update on my very large Better Call Saul video. I am making some real progress. I have finished the show now and I do have some thoughts. No promises, but I do want to make it a priority to get this review out sometime within a week. But as this is such a massive project for me, it could take a little longer. Remember to like and subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.